What's going on, everybody? It's your boy, the Scripture Plug.Albert, man. We're about to get into some Frank Turek, and he has this lecture that he's breaking down, talking about science, that scientists really are the ones that make up your science. So let's get into it. Let's see what he's talking about. Let's see what he's presenting for us. Dr. Frank Turek.
Ladies and gentlemen, how do you know that God exists?
Good question.
This is the interactive portion of the program. How do you know that he exists? All right, I hear creation, objective truth. What's that? Because you exist, experienced him.
Experience. Let's go.
As we talked about last night briefly, we know God by his effects. If this is a creation, and it is, that's an effect, we ought to reason back to a cause, a creator.
I'm saying.
There's design, as Steve Meyer talks about in Return to the God Hypothesis and his other books. Then there must be a designer. The effect is design, the cause is a designer. There's a moral law written on our hearts, that's the effect. We reason back to a cause of moral law. If we have the capacity to reason, and there are these immaterial laws of logic out there that we can access with our minds, that's the effect. We reason back to a cause, a great mind. If a man predicted and accomplished his own resurrection from the dead, that's the effect. We reason back to a cause of being like God. Who else could resurrect somebody from the dead? Even James Tour said it can't be done, right?
I guess
When
so.
he said, you got a living thing, you kill it. You got all the chemicals there. Why doesn't it resurrect itself? Because molecules don't go in the direction of making life. So you've got to have a cause for an effect. Yet scientists seem to be telling us that science can somehow explain all these effects we see. And actually what I think they're
Number
doing
theories.
is atheists are stealing from God while they're arguing against him.
Bunch of
And in
thieves
the
swiping,
book
no
Stealing
swiping.
from God, we have an acronym, CRIMES, C-R-I-M-E-S, and these letters stand for a different aspect of reality that I think atheists say point away from God, when in fact none of these things would exist unless God existed. The C stands for causality, the R reason, the I information, M morality, E evil, and S science. And science is our subject today. Atheists try and say that science has somehow disproven God. My view is that science would be impossible unless God existed.
Real quick before we move on, let me know in the comments. Let me know in the comments if you're an atheist or not. Why is it that you either believe or disbelieve in God? What is the evidence that you see that say, you know what, this is what I believe, so there can't be a God. This is the scientific method that I use. This is the theory that I use. And for you Christians, let me know in the comments, what is it that brought you to God? Because it's always a good time to hear a testimony. It's always good to understand what then helps somebody get to know the truth. I enjoy listening to people like Lee Strobel. If you don't know, Lee Strobel was a reporter who come to know God by doing some research because he wanted to disprove him. So then he looked up all the things he needed to look up. He looked up Gary Habermas's minimal facts argument. He talked to a whole bunch of just different scientists and other type of people to kind of get an understanding of him disproving God. And in doing so, he came to know God. So let me know what side you're on. It's all right if you're an atheist. You can talk to your boy. I'm just trying to learn. I'm not trying to bash anybody. I'm just trying to figure out why it is that you believe what you believe. So let me know in the comments whether you believe or disbelieve.
And as I say, this comes from the book, Stealing from God, Why Atheists Need God to Make Their Case. And I think there may be a few books back there. By the way, all the proceeds from the sale of the books will go to feed needy children. Mine. Okay?
Hey,
Just
let me
so
know,
you
bro.
I got
Let me
3
know.
sons, so I need some help. Actually, no, they're going to the Discovery Institute.
Closed mouths
all
don't get fed.
That's where all of the proceeds go. So here's what I want to talk about. Why science needs God. And you see there's a different title on this, but we'll get to the title here a little bit later. We're going to try and do this in 3 steps. First step is what is science? Second step is what does science say about God? And then thirdly, why does science need God? So let's start right here at point 1. What is science? Now, if someone were to stick a microphone in front of your face, like a man on the street interview, and ask you, hey, what is science? What would you say?
Theories.
Knowledge? Well, that's what the word means, knowledge, right? Cause and effect in the natural world.
Okay, all right.
You
Trial and error.
realize there's actually no agreed upon definition of science? That's why sometimes the Discovery Institute is labeled as pseudoscience, right? It's not really science. where other people will say, no, it is science. I think we could use sort of a minimalist interpretation of science. It's sort of Bacon's
Bacon.
definition, and he was a founder of modern science. He would say something like, science is a method of inquiry used to discover cause and effect relationships. So, at a minimum, when you're doing science, you're trying to discover what particular cause caused a particular effect. You're searching for causes, in other words. And there are at least two types of causes. There are intelligent causes, a person doing something. That's what Titus is trying to discover when he does archaeology, right? He sees an inscription. Well, he's got to figure that's got to be a personal cause. The other type of cause is a non-intelligent cause or a natural process. Now, how many people here have ever been to the Grand Canyon?
Not I.
Right? It's a beautiful geologic formation.
Flew
But
over
when
it.
you try and search for a cause for the Grand Canyon, do you have to posit an intelligent cause or, say, a natural cause? Do you have to posit that some intelligent creature put its finger down in the canyon to create it? Or might you say that wind, rain, erosion, maybe
Yo, what's that popular Christian picture that or no, it's feet in the sand. Oh well, feet in the sand, finger in the sand. So Jesus was out there just like creating everything. Hey, it is what it is. For me, I ain't gonna front when it. Oh, what's up, Demi? Good morning. You have a great day as well. So when it comes to what causes anything, I think everything is created by natural design. Not natural, excuse me. Intelligent design, excuse me. And from that intelligent design, I think everything that acts inside of it can become natural. So I think that's just like the uh, easiest way to kind of think about things. So when God, I believe anyway, creates something, then he allows courses and the different things that go around it to kind of form. So when he formed gravity, I don't think he just now is like holding everything together. I think he created gravity. Therefore, since gravity is created, now it is in action. So that's kind of my understanding of what goes on.
a great flood could create a canyon, right? You'd probably say B, okay? You don't need an intelligent being to create the Grand Canyon. But can everybody see the difference between this geologic formation and this geologic formation? Mount Rushmore, right? When
Mm,
you look at Mount Rushmore, you know that wasn't created by erosion.
right, right, right.
Not natural erosion, maybe political erosion. But you know that an intelligent being had to create those faces on Mount Rushmore. And all we're saying here is that the Grand Canyon is an example of a natural process or a natural cause, whereas Mount Rushmore would be an example of an intelligent cause. Now, there are two types of science in addition to two types of causes. For example, an empirical science, which is what people generally in our culture think science is, that's how things operate. Like, how does a car operate? How does a Model T operate? That's a different question, however, than the other type of science, which asks, how did things originate? Where did the Model T come from? These have been termed by different or defined by different terms. Sometimes people will say historic science is, origin science or maybe forensic science. This is studying the past, where empirical science studies how things operate routinely. How does a car operate? And we might say that the empirical science gives us technology, how do cars operate, how do iPhones operate. And do you realize that nobody is arguing over, say, how air conditioning works, or how iPhones work, or how medical technology works, or how cars work? There's not Christians arguing with atheists over these issues, right?
Mm.
We're not arguing over empirical questions. What are we arguing over? We're arguing over creation questions.
Yo, real quick, I ain't gonna front, y'all. I'm not gonna front. Let me know in the comments if you know. So there's certain things that I just don't care to learn how they work or operate, but some things I do, but I don't care that much. So if someone could tell me, sweet. I don't really want to look into it. So one thing that always blew my mind is how does radio frequencies work? That's just something that always blew my mind. How does the electrical parts of a particular radio then stem from sending things up to a satellite, and how does that then send everywhere else? That's something that I've never really I mean, I would like to know, but I've never really looked into. So if you know, let your boy know, 'cause that'd be pretty cool. But again, notice I don't wanna know that much because 'cause I'm pretty sure I could just Google it. But I want y'all to help your boy out. That's what we're here for. We're here to learn together. So if you can teach me, sweet, because I don't wanna do it on my own. If I did, I'd have done it by now. But let's continue.
Origin questions. We're arguing about how things happened in the past. We're not arguing how things operate now. And John Lennox, who, as you know, taught at Oxford for many
Love that
years,
guy.
gives his students a thought experiment. He says, suppose you have a Model T in front of you. What could account for the Model T? Henry Ford or the laws of internal combustion? You can only pick one. And Lennox
If I can only
says his
pick one.
students always say, Dr. Lennox, you actually need both. You need Henry Ford to create the Model T, and then you need the laws of internal combustion to do what they do in order for the Model T to operate. If the laws of internal combustion changed every 5 seconds, the Model T wouldn't work, right? So you need both causes for the Model T to exist to begin with and then to operate properly. And he says, why can my students see that, but Dawkins and Dennett and other atheistic scientists can't see this distinction? There's a distinction between how things originated and how things operate.
Makes
And
sense.
we're going to be talking about how things operate. In fact, we might say this. To say that science can disprove the existence of God is like saying that a mechanic can disprove the existence of Henry Ford. Right? Just because you know how that Model T works, does that mean you can explain away Henry Ford?
Nah.
Of
Mm-mm.
course not. Those two scientific questions, how things operate and how things work, or I should say how things operate and how things originated, are two different questions. And the questions that create all the controversy are not how things work generally, they're how things originated.
Yo, what up, race car? I'm gonna let you know. So right now, basically, the point of his lecture, well, his lecture's entitled um, "Science Doesn't Say Anything, Scientists Do." So basically, what he's saying is that too many times that people are, whether they be scientists, try to say that, okay, the science is saying this, this, this. And it's like, no, really, it's the people saying that, because his particular point is that you need not only the science, but the person to then come up with a conclusion. So that's what I believe he's talking about right now. So when he's talking about when you jumped in, race car, talking about Henry Ford, he was basically saying that um, just because a mechanic is creating something now, he can't say, "Oh, because I'm doing this now because of this particular method," that then discredits the one who actually created the vehicle, which was Henry Ford. So that's what he's saying. Basically, saying that God is Henry Ford in this equation where scientists try to say, "Oh, it can't be," but that's kind of where we're at this point.
So we're looking at an historical science. Here's the problem. Many scientists, particularly atheistic scientists, will use the prestige of empirical science, technology, to try and get the general public to think everything we say about historic science should be taken as gospel. When in fact, these are two completely different questions, and they require two different approaches to discover the right answer in each of these two categories. So don't let people, scientists, atheistic scientists, use the prestige of empirical science to get you to believe that what they're saying about origin science is correct. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. You have to look at the evidence and discover whether or not it makes sense, all right?
Back.
So, what is science? It's a search for causes. Two types of causes, natural and intelligent. Two types of science, origin science or historic science, and operation or empirical science. You with me so far? All
We're
right.
here. We're
Next
here.
question, what
Keep
does
going.
science say about God? And in order to do this, we got to go back to OJ. OJ. Now, some people in here have never heard of OJ Simpson. Who's never heard of OJ Simpson in here? Don't know anything about OJ Simpson. Okay. A few of us, a few of you youngsters. O.J. Simpson was one of the best running backs in NFL history. He ran for many years for the Buffalo Bills. This is back in, say, in the 70s. Before that, he was at USC. He won the Heisman Trophy. After he retired, he was a sideline reporter for the NFL.
Was a dog.
And in 1994, his wife and her boyfriend, his ex-wife, and her boyfriend were brutally murdered in Brentwood, California. It was a slash and dash murder. Blood everywhere, obviously. Both of these individuals were brutally knifed. And O.J. was seen as the prime suspect. And as you can see, the Newsweek article here said trail of blood. And there really, literally was a trail of blood from that crime scene all the way to O.J. And here is some of the evidence that they found. O.J. Simpson's blood was at the crime scene. There's only a 1 in 170 million chance it was not his blood. Secondly, Ron Goldman, who was killed, Nicole Brown Simpson, that's O.J.'s ex-wife, and Simpson's blood were in Simpson's white Bronco. For those who are old enough to remember, there was a low-speed chase on the LA freeways, not because of a traffic jam, but because they were tracking O.J., and he was in the back of this. He was in the back of this Bronco.
No, I think he did. I think he did say. I mean, technically, when he created that book, if I would have done it, I didn't read it. I'm only going off of the fact that the title was "If I Would Have Done It" or something very similar to that. Now that brother probably did it. Every matter of fact, I think everything pointed to he did it. This might be the greatest trial ever, where someone who was dead to rights should have been guilty. Again, I was too young when all this. I don't even think I was born when all this happened, actually. But I know the brother did it. I wasn't there, but I know he did it. He know he did it. Everybody know he did it. But Johnny Cochran was like, "Nah, bro, he ain't do it." And it was like, must not have. What was the phrase? If the glove don't fit, you must have quit or something like that. Yeah, that mantra. Well, if you come up with a chant, if you come up with a chant that is catchy enough, you can just capture a lot of people. That's really what's going on. He said, "If the glove don't fit, you must have quit." And everybody was in there like, "Hey, if the glove don't fit, you must quit." That's what happened. That's really what happened. But anyway, let me stop being foolish. Brother Frank is cooking right now. Let's get back into it.
Bronco, and a friend of his was driving it, and he was going to kill himself in the back of the. I mean, I don't have time to get all the details, but it was high TV, to say the least. The glove at the crime scene had blood from all three and matched the glove at Simpson's house. When O.J. was on the sidelines at the NFL, you would wear these like isotoner gloves when he's holding the microphone. And one of those gloves were found at the crime scene. It had blood from all three of them on it. And there was another glove at his house that matched that glove. Then there was a bloody footprints at the crime scene were from a rare brand of size 12 shoes that Simpson owned. There were only 199 pairs of these shoes sold in the United States, and Simpson had one of them, and his footprints were found at the crime scene. Also, Brown's blood was on Simpson's socks. There's only a 1 in 21 million chance it wasn't her blood. Now, here's my question. Does science show he was guilty? How many say, yep?
My brother dead to rights guilty.
How many say, no? How many say, it's a trap? Don't answer. Yeah, it's actually a trap. Why? The reason is because science doesn't say anything, scientists do. Science doesn't say a word. This is just data. First of all, you got to discover whether this data is accurate, and then secondly, you got to make a judgment. Does this data point more clearly to his guilt or maybe to his innocence? How could he be innocent? Well, maybe the evidence was planted. You had that racist Mark Furman on the LAPD. Maybe he planted this. Maybe there's other explanations. The data doesn't tell you that, does it? The data simply is raw, and then you need to try and judge the data. You need to interpret the data. And in fact, your worldview can determine how you interpret the data. In fact, there was a survey done by Newsweek magazine 10 years after the murders. Here's what they found. 77% believe Simpson was guilty. Oh, before I go there, whatever happened with the trial? Does anyone know? What happened was Oh, you guys know about the glove, don't you? Johnny Cochran, his defense attorney, was very astute because that glove they found at the crime scene, OJ was gonna try on during the trial. And at the opportune time, he tried the glove on.
Don't fit,
And
must quit.
before he tried the glove on, Johnny Cochran said, if the glove doesn't fit, you need to acquit.
Get him out of there.
So OJ had this, by the way, everybody loved OJ. OJ was like a hero, okay?
The juice.
So he's got this kind of surgical glove on, and he starts to try and put this glove found at the crime scene on, and he couldn't put it on. Why couldn't he put it on? Well, he didn't want to put it on, yeah. But secondly, the glove had shrunk because of all the blood on it. So he couldn't put that glove on, and as you said, he didn't want to put it on. So after the whole trial went through, OJ was not found innocent. What was he found?
Not guilty.
Not guilty. You can't say he was innocent, but what you can say is the evidence did not acquit or did not convict him, according to the jury. Now, CNN later did a whole documentary on this.
Yo, that's crazy. They had all that evidence to basically say, nah, he did it. It was a wrap, done deal. But that one thing right there was like, eh, yo, that brother got to be the luckiest dude ever. Not really, because I mean, well, I guess so, because he really didn't go to. Cause I'm pretty sure he would have been in prison for life for that, even though he's been in prison a lot more times after that, or at least jail a few times after that. But man, that is one thing. One thing I can't never get that lucky though. Well, I never do nothing like that. But if I could, and anything else, like let me just hit the lottery one time. Let me get lucky that one time. Nah, good Lord, no, I don't need that. Good Lord, no, I blow that real quick, especially if I don't earn it.
And they interviewed all the jurors, and they found that no matter what the evidence, even if they had video evidence, they never would have convicted OJ. Okay? OJ later went to jail for another reason, but he's free. He's a free man right now. Okay? Anyway, here's what they found. 77% believed Simpson was guilty, but there was an ethnic divide. 87% of whites thought he was guilty, where only 29% of blacks thought he was guilty. Why, do you think? Everybody's looking at the same evidence, but people might be coming at it from different worldview perspectives. Blacks had often seen them treated immorally by having evidence planted against them, where whites hadn't seen that. So when they look at the evidence, the blacks are going, I don't know, man, he might not be guilty. Whites are going, no, he's guilty. Why? Because the worldview, your experience, might determine how you interpret the evidence. Now let's apply this to evolution for a second. Here's Piltdown Man. How many people have heard of Piltdown Man?
I ain't never heard that man in day of my life.
Is? Well, it's a fake, but it was found in 1912, a discovery in Piltdown, England. The British Museum reconstructed fragments of a skull and jawbone and held it as a link between ape and man. The problem was it was revealed to be a hoax in 1923. It was a combination of a human skull, orangutan jaw, and chimpanzee teeth, but the scientific community did not admit it until 30 years later.
Bro, see, that's one thing I don't like about when it comes to learning things, because people just be lying. They just lie. Y'all remember back in the day when they told us about Thanksgiving and how you put your little hand on the paper and you traced it and you made a little turkey and everything was hee 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 ha ha ha, not realizing all the massacre and all the bloodshed that happened during there. But they was letting us know as kids, like, nah, this is what it is. Same thing that they be doing with science. They be like, especially with this, saying that, oh man, this is what the case was for some years and they just finally came out with it. Come on, bro. Why y'all gotta keep lying to us like that? That's why it's so hard for people to believe anything that they even look up or study because of that. But you know, one thing that they can't disprove or something that ain't been lied about, Jesus, you know what I'm saying? Death, burial, resurrection. That's one thing that ain't never, ever, ever, ever going to be tampered with or anything like that. Because people always try to do that. People try to say, oh, what about the books and all the different variations and all the different things that are taken out? We know about it. Thank God for that. I just want to throw that in there because, you know, Jesus is number one, y'all. But yeah, I'm getting tired of this putting stuff together and saying, "Oh, this is what it is," and not really being the case. Come on, man. How many papers did I waste with turkey hands thinking that is all right? Boy, I tell you.
Why? Because they already knew evolution was true in their own minds. So it had to be
I'm saying,
evidence
brother. I'm
of
saying.
macroevolution. Don't let the facts get in the way of a good ideology here.
Amen.
We already know the truth. This has to be evidence for it. Who put up the slide earlier? I think it was Dr. Jim Torr, that quote from Max Planck, who said basically scientific theories change when the old guard die off. These people are invested in this. So they're not going to let their ideology go unless some dramatic change comes about.
Mm.
The bottom line is your worldview may determine how you interpret the evidence. In fact, I think that's what causes Richard Dawkins to believe in macroevolution. This is many years ago. One of the founders of the modern intelligent design movement, in addition to Bill Dembski, was Philip Johnson, who was an attorney and taught at UCal Berkeley. And some of you will get that tomorrow. He wrote a book in 1991 called Darwin on Trial, where he just took the evidence and he used his own logical reasoning skills, his attorney skills, to see if Darwin on trial would go through. Do they have good evidence or not? And at one point he emailed Richard Dawkins and he asked Dawkins this question. Just bottom line me, Richard. Give me the best evidence you have for macroevolution. Why do you think it's true? And here is what Dawkins said. The reason we know for certain we are all related, including bacteria, is the universality of the genetic code and other biochemical fundamentals. Got this common genetic code. Now, in reality,
What do you say, Sky Apologetics? What you talking about? I'm not really well versed in Richard Dawkins. I've heard him be spoke upon by like people like John Lennox and Frank Turek, obviously now, but I really don't know who that is. So, what are some of the things he's saying? Let me know. Let me know, brother.
there isn't no common genetic code. There are many genetic codes, but there is a dominant one, so we'll give Dawkins some grace here. He's saying since we all share this common genetic code, we must be ancestrally related. You know what? Does the evidence tell you that's the conclusion? No, that's only one way to interpret the evidence. What could be another way to interpret the evidence? Right? It could be a common creator, a common designer. You see, but Dawkins has already ruled that out. He's already said there can't be a designer. So it doesn't matter how much evidence comes across him that points towards intelligence. He's going to say, no, it's got to be a natural cause. Remember, there's only two causes: natural, non-natural, or intelligent or non-intelligent. We might say natural. If you rule out one before you look at the evidence, how are you always going to interpret the data? It's got to be a natural cause. That's a philosophical presupposition. That's not a result of the evidence. And you can't.
Hold on. Time out. Time out. So, brother, Sky Apologetics and comments talking about some of the things that Richard Dawkins is talking about. If this is true, this brother is on some drugs, hardcore drugs. Gotta be. You said there are maybe aliens on other planets. Oh, is that supposed to be planets? Let me know. That look like giant spiders and have evolved differently than us. Yo, forget that. If that is, let's say, you know, that is true, right? I'm gone. Jesus, take me now. I don't even like dealing with spiders we got now. Spiders be this big, and I'm still not trying to mess with it. You go down south, spiders like this big. You go to Australia, monsters. So forget all that. But yeah, brother must be on shrooms or something like that. Do Google it real quick. I would. I promise you, I would. Yeah, okay, planets, cool. Yeah, I was about to say plants. That'd be. How did we not find that out? But anyway, I would, but my connection is trash right now. So I want to make sure that the stream just goes where it needs to go without any interruptions. But I promise you, I'm gonna make sure as soon as I'm able to, I'm gonna Google it. Actually, matter of fact, where's my phone at? I'm gonna Google on my phone. I'm gonna Google on my phone. Hopefully that doesn't interfere with anything. But I'm gonna let this rock out a little bit, and I'm gonna Google it, y'all. I'm Googling it.
Can't do science without philosophy. Science is built on philosophy. This is why Einstein famously said, unfortunately, the man of science is often a poor philosopher. Because you have to gather data and then interpret data. And who does that? Science doesn't do that. Scientists do that. And if the scientist has already ruled out one of only two possible interpretations, is it any wonder he always assumes it's got to be a natural cause? In fact, you might ask yourself the question, just how did we get here? Well, when you boil all of the arguments for macroevolution down, neo-Darwinism, I think you can put them in two basic.
Again, this is just the first thing I've seen that I looked at. This is, from an article called Focusing on Wildlife. And I don't know if you can see that, but I'll be danged. I'll be danged if a bunch of aliens just come up here and they jump out with 8 legs. Bruh, I don't know nah, Jesus take the wheel. Jesus take me. I ain't elephant size. Elephant size. Bruh. Anyway, my bad, y'all. You right, Sky. You Sky. You right, brother Sky.
Categories are DNA and homology. So what Dawkins is talking about, this common.
Oh wait, my bad. Are you? I don't really know. You a brother or sister, Sky? I don't know. Let me know, because now I kind of feel like I disrespected you if you're not a brother and you are a sister. Let me know.
Genetic code, and then homology, which is basically structure. We have a common structure. We do have, we do look like we could have evolved from apes. That certainly is possible, or from a common ancestor, right? Because we have a common structure. And so what the evolutionists might say is this points to a common ancestor. And they could be right. But you might ask them, well, why a common ancestor and not a common designer? Well, because evolution's true. Well, how do you know evolution's true? Because of DNA and homology. Can anyone see this is called circular reasoning? You would need evidence outside of DNA and homology, because that evidence could go either way, correct? When you look at things like irreducible complexity and epigenetic information and the Cambrian explosion, the fossil record, and other items, I think the evidence points clearly in the other direction, that there's got to be an intelligence. And of course, DNA itself, a code, as Stephen has already said, is evidence of intelligence itself, because codes come from coders, programs come from programmers, messages come from minds. So, what's the bottom line to this section? What does science say about God? You know what the answer is? Nothing. Because science doesn't say anything about anything. It's scientists that say things. Now, I think, properly interpreted, scientific evidence can point toward a supreme intelligent being. It's not going to get you all the way to Jesus. Why? Because if you look at, say, the creation of the universe, and space, matter, and time had a beginning out of nothing, which is what the evidence seems to show, we know the cause must be spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, personal, and intelligent. But we don't know if this is Allah. We don't know if this is Jesus. We don't know if this is some other deistic or theistic generic God. In order to discover whether or not it's the Christian God, you need some historical information. And that's why you've got to look into the evidence for the resurrection of Jesus. Now, I think when you do that, I think you can realize that the same being that walked out of the tomb 1,990 years ago is the same being in whose divine nature created the universe out of nothing. You don't get there with any scientific argument. You get 6 attributes from just the cosmological argument, which show you it could be the God of the Bible, but you don't know it is until you look at some other evidence, all right? So now let's go to why does science need God? And we talked about this last night briefly. When somebody says all truth comes from science, this is scientism, by the way, what question are you going to ask that person? Yeah, is that a scientific truth? Can you go in the laboratory and prove this claim? No, that's a philosophical claim. And what you want to do when people utter things like this is you want to turn the claim on itself. Because this claim right here defeats itself. That claim right there is not a truth from science. It's actually a truth about science. And it happens to be false. because the most important things in life, by the way, have nothing to do with science. Honey, do you love me? Yeah. Why? I don't know. Let's run an experiment. No! I mean, that's not that's not what it's all about, okay? So you might say, okay, science, we don't get all our truth from science. Well, what can't science explain? Now, I was going to show you this video, but since we don't have audio, I can't show you. How many of you have seen this video between Peter Atkins and William Lane Craig? Have you seen this debate? Okay, this debate, I was at this debate in 1998 in Atlanta, Georgia, where William Lane Craig and Peter Atkins were debating. And at one point, Peter Atkins asked Bill Craig here, do you deny that all truth comes from science? And William Lane Craig said, yes, I deny that all truth comes from science. And then Atkins said, well, what truth do you get that isn't from science? And then Craig, as he's saying right here in Spanish subtitles, just for your benefit, goes into a eloquent 5-point rebuttal of what Atkins had tried to say, that all truth comes from science. And basically, here's what he says. He says that science can't explain logical and mathematical truths. Why? Because you need those things in order to do science. You can't go in the laboratory and prove those things by science. You need them in order to do some sort of experiment. Same thing is true with metaphysical truths, like there's a real world out there that you can ascertain outside of your skull. That moral and ethical truths, such as murder is wrong, you don't get that from science. In fact, science is amoral. You have to import morality into science, because Joseph Mengele was a scientist, right? Was he a good or bad scientist? You don't get that from science itself. You have to import morality from outside of science. Aesthetic truths, and of course, science itself. Why science itself? Because science is built on philosophical principles that you need in order to actually get any results. And this is an image from the book Stealing from God. My friend J. Warner Wallace, who's an artist as well, drew this for me. I wanted to point out that all of these philosophical presuppositions you see here under this scientist are assumed before you can actually frame a scientific investigation, conduct it, or interpret it. You've got to assume morality, because you don't get morality from a test tube. You got to bring morality to the scientific endeavor. Also, free will. You got to have free will to follow the evidence where it leads. You can't be a molecular machine and follow the evidence where it leads. Logic, realism, uniformity. Steve has been talking about that. That causes in the past must be like causes in the present. The present is the key to the past. How are we going to know that life could not have originated by natural processes in the past if things in the past work differently than they do now? We can't know. We have to assume that in the past, the natural laws that run the universe now are the same natural laws that ran it in the past. Otherwise, we can't get at the past. That's a philosophical presupposition. You can't prove that. You have to assume it. Also, reason, orderly natural laws, and causality. Let's just look at a couple of these for a second. Let's look at reason. Do you know that materialists think that all thoughts are determined by the laws of physics? In other words, you may think you have free will, you may think you're reasoning, but you're really not. You're just a molecular machine. You're a moist robot.
Ooh, that don't sound good at
Now,
all.
if someone were to ask you this question or make this statement, what would you ask them back?
Yeah, what if you ashy though? Can you be a moist robot if you just ashy? Out here knuckles draws all get out like you're punching concrete. Hey, real quick, since I did stop it, I just want to say, man, I'm so very thankful for brothers like this, brothers like John Lennox, and all the people that are of the faith that look into and understand all the different issues with science, or just actually goes into not only physics but philosophy and all these areas for people like me who don't want to, who do not want to. Bless them. Bless God for giving them the mind to do all this, because this is a beautiful thing so that they can share with people like me. Because man, I like to keep things super simple. What I like to do is I like to, for example, My understanding, now don't judge me. My understanding of evolution, right? Again, I can believe in microevolution, not macroevolution, or whichever one is like the small changes of adapting things of that nature. But my understanding is this: if we evolved from a particular species, for example, like apes, why in the world are still apes around? Or if we evolved from some sort of fish or bacteria or whatever the case, is that still around? If not, why didn't that evolve? And also, if it took us billions of years to get to the point where we're able to use tools and develop and understand concepts, why are there not other species that are able to do that as well that's been around a lot longer than us? Or even ones that came after us that would probably be able to, adapt quicker because they are after everything that went on. So that's my understanding, my small understanding of evolution. So that's kind of how I rationalize, well, evolution just doesn't make sense to me. But these brothers right here really get down into the nitty gritty and break it down in a lot more depth. And also, so people like me, if I, choose to, can actually really learn. So I really am thankful and grateful for brothers like this. And just being able to share and the information that we have access to. So shout out to Dr. Frank Turk again, doing his thing, man, doing his thing.
Were you free to say that? Yeah, like if someone says all thoughts are determined by the laws of physics, you ought to ask, is that one too? Is this statement caused by the laws of physics? Because if it is, why should you believe it? You're not reasoning to that conclusion, you're just reacting. Again, what you do is you turn the claim on itself to show that this is a self-defeating statement. And an evolutionist of many years ago, J.B.S. Haldane, put it well. He realized that robots can't reason, so why believe anything? Here's how he put it. He said, if my mental processes are determined wholly by the motions of atoms in my brain, I have no reason to suppose that my beliefs are true, and hence I have no reason for supposing my brain to be composed of atoms. Right? You guys see where he's going with this? He's understanding the self-defeating nature of materialism. But nobody, and I mean nobody, said it better than C.S. Lewis, and I can't see it any better than C.S. Lewis, so I'm just going to show you what he said. This is a 2-slide quote, so stick with me. Lewis points out that if materialistic atheism is true, if you're just a molecular machine, then reason is impossible. Here's how he put it. And this is ironic because what? What do atheists do? They claim to be champions of reason. They've made reason impossible by their own ideology of materialism. Here's how he put it. He said, suppose there were no intelligence behind the universe. In that case, nobody designed my brain for the purpose of thinking. Thought is merely the byproduct of some atoms within my skull. But if so, how can I trust my own thinking to be true? But if I can't trust my own thinking, of course I can't trust the arguments leading to atheism, and therefore have no reason to be an atheist or anything else. Unless I believe in God, I can't believe in thought, so I can never use thought to disbelieve in God. Boom, as John Madden would say. You can't say it better than that. Atheists are stealing from God to argue against him.
Mm.
They can't explain the effect of reason, and yet they're just assuming that reason is on their side. Reason should make no sense if they are molecular machines, if materialism is true. Daniel Dennett, one of the new atheists, believes consciousness is an illusion. One wonders if he was conscious when he wrote this. In order to know your consciousness is an illusion, you've got to be outside your consciousness, right? Like, for example, how do you know that you're just having a dream? What has to happen to you? You got to wake up. You got to get outside the dream to say, whew, that was just a dream, right? In order for you to say your consciousness is an illusion, you'd have to have some kind of super consciousness to say that your consciousness is just an illusion. You'd have to be God, in other words. Here's the problem with atheists on these issues. Atheists exempt themselves from their own theories, right? Daniel Dennett thinks consciousness is an illusion, but he doesn't think his own consciousness is an illusion. He has to use consciousness to write books to say that consciousness is an illusion.
Damn.
This is self-defeating. So reason is impossible if materialism's true. What about orderly natural laws. Why do we need those in order to do science? Well, let's go back to you at 11 weeks. This is you in the womb at 11 weeks. Question, is this animal, mineral,
I got it.
vegetable, or human? That's human. All right, let's go back even further than 11 weeks. Let's go all the way back to when your mother and your father got together to conceive you. Have you guys had this talk before? I see some young people in here, so I'll try and be discreet. I also see some older people in here, so I'll try and be discreet as well, just in case you've forgotten how this works. When your mother and your father got together to conceive you, your mother unconsciously perfumed her egg to attract your father, and then your father sent the entire population of the United States, 300 million soldiers, toward your mother's egg. And then there was a race, and you won.
Hey, we
Don't
out
let
here.
anyone ever tell you you're not special. You beat out 300 million others. You have blown away anything Michael Phelps has done. Now, seeing some of you limping here
Technically, not really, because he did the same thing.
earlier makes it hard for me to believe you were the fastest soldier in the gene pool, but you were. Now, your soldier was 20 to 30 times smaller than a grain of salt, yet it contained half of the 3.5 billion letter genome, your software program, your DNA. All the letters were in the right order. And your mother's egg was about the size of a period at the end of a sentence in an average book. And it contained the other half of the 3.5 billion letter genome, your software program, your DNA. And when your soldier and your egg came together, a new 100% genetic human being was created. You know, you have not received any more genetic information from this point till right now. Your genetic information has just duplicated itself. In fact, there were only 4 things separating you from adulthood: time, air, water, and food. Those are the same 4 things that separate a 2-year-old from adulthood. Does this have implications on the abortion issue? Yeah, I think it does. Why do we kill the unborn child in the womb? It's the same genetically as a toddler.
He's spitting.
They're the same. You say, well, Frank, come on, you can't legislate morality. All right, no extra charge for this. This was the subject of our first book, creatively titled Legislating Morality. All laws legislate morality. Every law declares one behavior right and opposite behavior wrong. You can't think of a law that doesn't legislate morality. The only question is, whose morality will we legislate? And I don't want to legislate my morality. I don't want to legislate your morality. I want to legislate the morality. The one Thomas Jefferson said was self-evident. The one the Apostle Paul said, the Gentiles are not of the law written on their hearts. Look, if you have a problem with the morality, you don't have a problem with me. I didn't make it up. This isn't my morality. I didn't make this stuff up. I didn't make up the fact that murder's wrong, that abortion's wrong, that rape is wrong, that theft is wrong, that men were made for women and women were made for men, and the best way to perpetuate and stabilize society, which is the reason the government's involved in marriage to begin with, is to legally recognize that man-woman relationship over every other relationship. I didn't make any of this stuff up. This isn't my morality. It's not yours. It just happens to be thee. And if you don't like it, you don't have a problem with me. You have a problem with the Creator upon whose nature this morality is derived. All right, no extra charge for that. Let's go back to this. Thank you, Mom. Thank you. Let's go back to this. From this point till right now, a construction project of astonishing complexity began taking place. Cells began multiplying at a rate of 4,000 cells per second. Brain cells began multiplying at a rate of 100,000 cells per second. For most of you, anyway. Some cells became brain cells, others heart cells, others lung cells. Some cells went so far across you to become what they needed to become that it would be equivalent to you today walking across the United States alone. And that construction project continues to this very moment. You just made 4 million new red blood cells. You just made another 4 million new red blood
God
cells.
bless you, Tommy.
You just made another 4. Knock it off. I mean, are you thinking about this? Are you going, Frank, hang on, time out. I gotta make new red blood cells right here. You're not thinking about this at all, right? It's just happening. Why is it happening? Aristotle recognized something 2,400 years ago. He didn't know anything about blood cells, but he did know that all of nature's going in a direction. For example, why does an acorn, if it's properly nourished, always go in the direction of becoming an oak tree? Why doesn't it become an elm tree or a birch tree or a seahorse? You say, well, Frank, it's programmed to become an oak tree. Well, who programmed it?
Mm.
Is an acorn conscious? Is an acorn in the ground going, all right, what do I have to do to become an oak tree? No, it's not conscious, but it goes in a direction consistently. If it doesn't have a mind of its own, yet it reliably goes in a direction, there must be an external mind directing it toward an end.
Makes sense to me.
That is what Aristotle called the unmoved mover.
Mm.
Thomas Aquinas came along in the 1200s AD and he said, this is going to be my fifth way to argue for God, that all of nature's going in a direction. If it's going in a direction, there must be someone directing it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why we can do science, because nature is going in a direction. Nature is orderly. Natural laws are persistent and consistent. Now notice, this argument for God is not a Big Bang argument way back when. In fact, Aristotle mistakenly thought the universe was eternal. Yet he still said there's got to be a director, there's got to be a cause for all this. There's got to be somebody keeping all this going. So this is not a historical cause. This is a cause that exists every single second the universe exists. This is why Paul comes along and he says, in him we live and move and have our being. And Christ holds all things together. And the writer of Hebrews says, God sustains all things by his powerful word. This is why we can do science. If the world wasn't orderly, if these natural laws didn't exist, if cause and effect didn't hold, you couldn't search for causes. In fact, you could do nothing because you wouldn't exist. We're being held together. So, science requires nature to be goal-directed. Why is nature that way? Because there's a mind behind nature. You know, we forget what God does. Yes, God creates. We forget, though, he also sustains, and on certain instances, he intervenes directly in special acts to get our attention. You ought to follow this guy.
Real quick, so some of the reasons why I also believe and why I'm very interested in this, I seen a couple years back. Again, I'm not saying I agree with this fella's beliefs because I hear he believes some off the wall things. But I was watching this lecture of dang, what's the brother's name now? Rob Bell. That's his name. His name's Rob Bell, and he had a lecture. He had a whiteboard behind him, and he kind of broke down a bunch of different things. And one of the things that he broke down was the science of fine tuning, and how that when it comes to the amount of water and the amount of salt and the amount of all these just different things that go on for us to be able to live, that it couldn't have just happened by happenstance, that someone had to have dialed and turned these dials to exactly the right point where we need to live. So he talked about the axis of the earth's tilt, and he talked about just how gravity is affected in the manner that everything is created for us to be able to sustain life, whereas even if it was like a millicentimeter off or whatever the case, either side of any of these dials, there'll be absolutely no life. So for me, that also just tells me that it can't just happen because that to me that makes absolutely no sense that a big bang happened and then all these things got created into the matter of in the manner of um, everything fitting into a way that just is too perfect. It doesn't make sense to say this just happened. I cannot, and I haven't read the book yet, but shout out to Sky Apologetics, by the way. Appreciate you, brother, for sending me that. I haven't read the book yet, but again, if that's what it takes for me to be an atheist or some other issues that I haven't thought about at this point, I do not want to. I don't have enough faith, just like him. I don't have enough faith to think that all these different things are fine tuned in the way that they are, just for it to just be like, let's happen. Let it let it be that way. Yeah, nah, not I, not me, no sir.
because I'm pouring out miracles through him. That's why you ought to follow
Hugh
Moses. That's why you
Ross.
ought to follow
I'm gonna have to
Elijah
look
and
that up
Elijah.
then
That's why you ought to
because I love
follow
that.
Jesus and the apostles, because they can do miracles. So, what's the summary of all this? What is science? A search for causes. Two types of causes: natural causes, non natural or intelligent causes. Two types of science: historical science, empirical science. What does science say about God? Nothing, because science doesn't say anything. Scientists say things. One other quick example of this, we'll go to your questions here in a minute. You ever wonder why you've gotten conflicting advice on COVID? You say follow the science. Which science? Look, if scientists have good data and they interpret it properly, you'll get good advice. If they got good data and don't interpret it properly,
Yo, Sky, I got to talk with you more because you got all the info I need. You got all the info I need, all the things that I'm trying to look into. You just got it there. You're like, yo, I heard of this. I know this. I know this. So just trust and believe. I'm gonna be hitting you up for all this information, try to find where all this stuff is because again, one thing I like to do is I like to learn and I like to understand, and then I like to give it out to everybody else. So for the fellas who or ladies who see this video who haven't seen Dr. Frank Turk before, that's what I'm here for. So I appreciate you because I haven't heard of Hugh Ross and already got him linked up for the watch later. So hey, I appreciate you, brother. This is what it's about: spreading the truth, spreading the love, spreading the gospel, spreading everything so that we can have a better understanding and help the people that we can help when it comes to teaching them about Christ. Because there's many different ways that you can reach people. Some people enjoy getting down and dirty when it comes to the science and all the different theological things and all the different philosophical areas. So if I can present something to help them, hey, that's what it's about. So that's what you're doing right now for me, Sky. You're helping me out in that manner, and I appreciate you so very much for that.
you'll get bad advice. If they got bad data, doesn't matter how they interpret it, you're going to get bad advice. If there's a political agenda, no, that'll never happen. Scientists are just as susceptible to the big three motivators that can pull any of us off track. What are the
Mm.
big three? Sex, money, power. That can corrupt any of us. Scientists are just as susceptible to that as anyone else. So, why does science need God? Well, first of all, you need an orderly universe,
Mm.
and you need reliable cause and effect. And without somebody ordering it all that and keeping it all going, you couldn't do science. So let me give you the 5 points I hope you take away from what we just talked about. John, you can come up now because we're just gonna go through these 5 real quickly. We know God by his effects, and science is a search for causes of effects. Some effects discovered by scientists provide evidence for an intelligent cause. It's not a God of the gaps argument. As Steve will say, once you have a message, you've got positive evidence for an intelligent cause, not just a lack of a natural cause. 2, knowing how something works doesn't explain its origin. Just because we're really good with technology shouldn't get you to believe that just because scientists who are really good at making iPhones or any other technology, that they know how we got here. Thirdly, since all data needs to be interpreted, science doesn't say anything scientists do, and atheists often interpret wrongly because they ruled out the one type of intelligent cause or the one type of cause out of 2 that exist. They've just ruled it out. Number 4, science would be impossible without orderly, goal-directed natural laws, and such
Mm.
laws, I think, are best explained by God. Finally, this is a new point. There is no conflict between the Bible and the natural world. There may be conflict between some interpretations
Ooh.
of the Bible and the natural world. Remember, God has written 2 books. What are the 2 books? The Bible and creation, the Bible and the natural world. So let's end with Sir Fred Hoyle, who was an atheist. He said this: a common sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a super intellect has monkeyed with physics as well as chemistry and biology, and there are no blind forces worth speaking about in nature.
Mm. Shout out, man. Go ahead and Frank Turk did his thing. That was a blessing to be able to watch with y'all. Man. So that was awesome. Hopefully you guys got a lot of it like I did. And I just continue and I want to, excuse me, continue just to learn and grow from the people that know a lot more than I do. That's what it's about. Learning and growing. Shout out to Sky Apologetics. So do you know one I just have the PDF right now of Dr. Bro Branson's his dissertation about the LPT. Do you know anything about that, Sky, when it comes to defending against the logical probability, or excuse me, the logical problem of the Trinity? Oh, of course. Oh, wait, real quick. I got another thing, Sky, since you're here. So, right now, the first interview I want to do, one of the things I want to do on my lives are interview people and have them share testimonies. Um, and right now, I got brother Avery, got Logic. Hopefully, going to be coming on soon. He'll probably be my first person I interview, and have just have him share his testimony, what it is that he's doing, and things of that nature. Because I think that's very important for people not only to see the apologetic side, but also why people came to understand and why they wanted to do apologetics, and also what led them to have a relationship with God. So, oh, of course, I got them too. I got them. I asked Black Doctor. I asked Chris Claus. I got them there. I got a bunch of people I'm getting ready. And with that, since you wanna help your boy out, I wanna ask you, because one thing I don't necessarily just want it to be is I don't want it necessarily just be nothing but creators and things of that nature. I want other people, and I don't even know if you're a creator. If you got a channel, I'll follow it because you obviously know a lot, and your name's Sky Apologetics. So I'm assuming you have some sort of channel or some sort of social media. But one thing I do just also regular, I don't want to say regular, but other people that just have faith that may not necessarily be on social media share too, because I think that's powerful as well. I don't think there's any uh, um, limit to being able to hear somebody's testimony, whether they be a child to 88 to whatever the case. So look up Sig. I want to have a channel. Well, get one. Start one up. Do it. I started this channel. Technically, it was a year, but I started just doing music reactions, and I stopped for a long time. So then I started the apologetics wave, and reacting to the Sam Shamoons and everything like that. 6 months ago now. So, ain't nothing to it but to do it. So, and Sig, yeah, I'm gonna plan on hitting him up. The cool thing is that the space is so amazing that once you like know someone like Brother Avery, then he can get you in with everybody else. Because I've seen Sig on his stuff a lot. I've seen him with Black Doc a lot. I've seen him, with Chris Claus. I want to get Pro Life Chloe on here too. Her book is fire. So I want to be able to talk with her about that. So I have a lot of things I want to do when it comes to just sharing people's testimonies and trying to just grow the community. And man, so Sky, this is an invitation to you. If you ever want to come up and share your testimony and share what it is that you got going on, feel free. Feel free. Just let me know. We'll set it up. And don't worry, it ain't gotta be early like this. Once I actually get people's schedules and stuff like that, I can, schedule around them. So, you ain't gotta worry about that if you so choose. But amen, Sky. Amen. But with that being said, I do gotta get out of here. I gotta prepare for some things. I do appreciate you guys for watching up to this point. If you're just tuning in later after the live stream, excuse me, appreciate you too. Love you. This has been your boy, Descriptive Plug Albert. Catch y'all next time. I'm out.